I moved to Dubai in 2005. I'm originally born and raised in Australia. I have two children, a 10-year-old daughter and a 7-year-old son, both born and raised in Dubai.
One of the things I would say is I think the schools here are amazing. And I think they look amazing. I'm not going to mention a particular school, but I took my son to a school and he was a little bit behind because we moved over from Spain. They wanted to keep him back a year.
Okay.
And I didn't want that to happen because I was scared of like what kind of stigma that would give him externally and internally, right? Yeah.
But it is funny, just to come back to what you said about being kept back. It's funny how you said that. So I initially had my child in a UK curriculum school and then an Australian curriculum school opened. And being Australian, I thought that worked quite well for us. And because of the change of curriculum, she had to repeat the same year. Right. And she did, even at that age, she was only in I think she was going into year 2, kept saying, but I've been held back. And it was this stigma that she had to be held back. And she even used the words, maybe am I stupid, mummy?
Yeah.
And I was like, no, telling you're definitely not stupid. It's nothing to do with where you're at. It's simply a curriculum thing. It's simply an external thing that you can't control.
So Katt, welcome to Parenting Without the Manual. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So give us a little bit of background about yourself. I think you've 2 kids.
I have 2 children, a 10-year-old daughter and a 7-year-old son, both born and raised in Dubai.
Wow. And how long have you been here for now?
I'm coming up to 21 years in Dubai.
And what's your background and like where you're from and what brought you here in the first place?
So I moved to Dubai in 2005. I'm originally born and raised in Australia. Both parents are from Mauritius. I moved here initially as what we like to call a trolley dolly, cabin crew for Emirates Airline, as half of the women in Dubai did. And did that for around 10 years and then moved on from that and started a marketing agency, which I still have. It's several years old now. And it primarily now focuses on strategic growth and commercial growth for marketing, business development partnerships for brands and individuals for that matter.
So you're an entrepreneur mum?
I am.
So what I want to ask you now, and I think that there's a big difference between, let's say, a non-entrepreneur mum and an entrepreneur mum, right? Because I think you've got to juggle a lot of balls. Yes. And I think that some parents can look at it like, I don't have enough time, it's difficult. And I think that when you're an entrepreneurial parent, you kind of tend to take everything in your stride. Like you seem to it doesn't matter how much you've got, you just... Yeah.
There's always something else that you'll take on for sure. I mean, I didn't mention that I also work full time for a children's concept store and event space. So there's always a lot of plates being spun on a daily basis. And to be fair, I'm probably always looking for more, really.
It's okay, fantastic. And are your parents entrepreneurial?
No, both worked in different sectors across government mostly in Australia. So no, not really from an entrepreneurial family at all, actually, but it was just always something that I knew I wanted to do.
Have you has your lifestyle, have you been your lifestyle gone up a level from where you grew up?
I would definitely say so. I think the lifestyle anyway in Dubai is very different from the lifestyle in Australia. I grew up in the suburbs in Australia, very quiet life, but very sporty and very busy. We were always a busy family anyway. So I think I've taken that overall feeling and adopted it here, but then Dubai just is times 10. So it adds a whole nother level to it.
Have you ever read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad?
I haven't.
Okay, cool. Okay, so I'd encourage you to read that.
Okay.
But it's about, funny enough, his parents his dad worked for government. So it was one school of education, and then his best friend's dad was like an entrepreneur and was more tax efficient and all sorts of stuff, and it was a completely different mindset of the two dads. But so it's just quite interesting listening that your parents were from government and you're here, right, and running as an entrepreneur. So I suppose what I want to ask you, what's 7 and 11, correct?
7 and 10.
7 and 10. So would you have more kids firstly?
Ooh, I might. Don't know how to answer that. Okay. Potentially, maybe. I'm not sure. Probably not is the probable final answer there. But it's not a hard no. Okay,
good. And because it's nice because they're close together. So do you find that it's good having the two so close together?
I'm a big fan of my kids. I think they're great kids. They have awesome personalities and both are very nurturing towards each other, which I think is really important. I've really tried to raise them to be kind of best mates. And of course they're siblings and they fight and they do all the things that siblings do, but they are also really caring, lovely kids with good manners, which I'm a big stickler on. And I think part of that is their age gap, but it's also, I think, to do with in my opinion, having a girl first and a boy second, because I
Okay.
think that it automatically drives that nurturing character out of
Yeah.
a female.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then that's what he sees and he adopts.
Love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. And so what are like the key things, just before this, we were talking a little bit about schooling and homeschooling. What's your thoughts on the part schooling plays to teach them and the skills that you think they should learn as life skills as well?
Yeah, look, school plays a huge role. I actually had a huge conversation with my 10-year-old daughter last night about school, and trying to have her understand why it's important. She's at that age where school's a little bit like roll my eyes at it, not that not that interested, not as excited about it, and yet if I say to her that she's going to miss a day of school, she's devastated. So we had this conversation of why do you think that you want to say that you don't like it when evidently you do, right?
Yeah.
So there's this peer pressure to be cool and to say things like that. But ultimately, I think the schooling system everywhere worldwide is a huge part in not just their intellectual development, but into their social development as well. But it teaches them, the basics, I think, in life: math, English, the two basics that I think, for me anyway, played a big part in my academic development. And then outside of that, I think it's really important as parents and then as caregivers and as the wider group of people that you spend your time with to help develop their emotional development.
Yeah, for sure. Have you come across bullying yet at all or not? Have you with the kids? Have the kids
Bullying?
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, on both sides. So I've seen it where there's been some bullying, mildly, thankfully. And I won't say that either of my children have bullied, but they've made comments that I thought weren't great.
Gotcha,
and we've had conversations about that for them to see it in a bigger light. And thankfully, again, they've been quite understanding and realised moved on. We're part of quite a large community that exists in Dubai called Pirate Surf, which is a surf life-saving kind of community, which is incredible.
Where the kids go down to the beach. Is it Kite Beach, is it?
Kite Beach.
Someone's told me about that.
It's amazing.
Really? Okay.
And Candy, who runs that, is a huge advocate for respect as a child, and learning respect for all people around you of every walk of life, including people your own age, older, younger, different nationalities, it doesn't matter. And so she has noticed bullying, of course, because when children are around, there's always the possibility, and she brings that up a lot. So she's really good, and this is what I was saying, that greater, net of people that you surround yourself with that help foster the same principles that you're trying to develop.
Well, the environment definitely shapes us, and I think, and again, it's interesting, and so do your kids go to the same school, by the way?
They do, yes.
I thought they would, yeah. And but I think for the social aspect. So I'm, by the way, I'm just encountering where my son's going through a little bit of bullying at the minute.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm seeing it from the other side. To be fair, I suppose I've actually now that you mention it that way, I see it on the other end where he would get in trouble, not for being bullying. It's never for bullying really. He's very respectful and he's an only child, but just being a bit more disruptive. I think ADHD, like just talking and learning differently as well. So this is another thing as well, because you've got two kids. I don't really have a point of reference other than my own child, right? But one of the things I would say is I think the schools here are amazing, and I think they look amazing. I'm not going to mention a particular school, but I took my son to a school and he was a little bit behind, and because we moved over from Spain, and they wanted to keep him back a year.
Okay.
And I didn't want that to happen because I was scared of like what kind of stigma that would give him, externally and internally, right? So I got the teacher on to give him some extra tutoring, and the bottom line where I'm getting to is I was more disappointed in the teacher than the school itself. So you see this beautiful school and you think, we're paying a fortune to go, and they've got everything, but you don't actually know it's the teacher that they're spending time with. It's the teacher that's shaping them. And I think just because the school's nice, it doesn't mean the teacher's great.
Agreed. I make it a point to get to know my children's teachers. Obviously at the beginning of the school year, you receive a note from the teacher, and it gives you a very brief background on who they are and what their background is. But I always make a point to try and meet that person and have a conversation with them, and understand, I guess, who they are fundamentally, because that is who your child's going to be spending the most amount of time with on a daily basis. Yeah. But it is funny, just to come back to what you said about being kept back, it's funny how you said that. So I initially had my child in a UK curriculum school, and then an Australian curriculum school opened, and being Australian, I thought that worked quite well for us, and I went for a tour of it, and I met the principal, who's an incredible woman, and I really fell in love with it. And so we moved. My daughter at the time, my son wasn't in school. And because of the change of curriculum, she had to repeat the same year. Now, it wasn't repeating the actual academic curriculum because the curriculum is different, but it was repeating the same year.
Right.
And she did, even at that age, she was only in year, I think she was going into year 2, kept saying, but I've been held back. And I'm like, you actually haven't been held back at all, actually. But you are doing the same grade again, based on the curriculum. And it was this stigma that she had, that she was being held back, even though everyone in her
she was in the same age,
same age.
Yeah.
And that's exactly it, because the Australian curriculum is calendar year versus UK curriculum, which goes from a summer to a summer, right? So it's just a completely different format.
Got you.
And so, but there was a really big stigma, and we had to have multiple conversations with her about not being...
The stigma was internal.
Yeah.
It wasn't anyone else.
I mean, all the kids in her grade were all the same age as her, and to be fair, she was actually a little bit ahead curriculum-wise.
Yeah, she would be.
But she just kept being like, oh, I had to be held back. And she even used the words, maybe am I stupid, mummy?
Yeah.
And I was like, no, telling you, definitely not stupid. It's nothing to do with where you're at. It's simply a curriculum thing. It's simply an external thing that you can't control. But it was there. So it definitely plays a part for sure. Yeah.
And so, you know, you found entrepreneurialism, or you became an entrepreneur like after having a career. I
kind of fell into it, if I'm honest. I was pregnant with my daughter, Poppy, and I didn't want to go back to flying because I didn't want to be away from her constantly. So I started doing some freelance work initially, and then that turned into something that could become a business. So that's how it,
And obviously you've upskilled yourself. Like I can tell we've met like once before, right? But I can tell you're very accomplished, by the way. And I read energy from people. So you've got a great. So you've obviously upskilled yourself to get you are, because I know what it takes to be an entrepreneur. You don't just fall into it and it doesn't just happen. So you've done a great job. So you've obviously learned things later on in life.
Absolutely.
So would you start teaching those things to your kids now, or do you think they need to learn it at a different age? Do you think, like, what's your thoughts on that? And do would you want them to learn these skills?
Again, it's an interesting question, because I had these thoughts yesterday evening and kind of had this conversation with my daughter.
It's a timely manner.
Very timely, because I said to her, we haven't really discovered what your thing is yet at 10 years old, which I don't think is necessary. But at the same time, I'm not sure yet which direction to help lead her or direct her, because I'm not sure what she'll be most passionate about, and therefore what she'll kind of throw herself into willingly and want to do, right? So, and that for me is a really important part, because I think we all can say, the generation before us did the jobs that they should have done versus our generation that chooses things that we're passionate about and we make that our job. And I would like my children to be able to do that too, to find something that they actually really love doing, that fulfills them, that feels good to them, and that's their job. Right, and that's where they make money, and that's where they make their living. So I'm kind of in this kind of limbo right now, trying to figure out at 10, because she's quite smart.
Where can you guide her?
Yeah, which way am I guiding her, and what can I help her focus on, or what can I help push her for? Yeah.
So I'll share something with you, and I hope it serves to help you. This definitely shaped my life. I learned this. I had a mentor in one of my businesses who's he's still a great friend today, an incredibly accomplished guy. And I'm very fortunate that I met him when I did, and he helped me shape my life. I was in my early 30s when I met him, and he taught me about designing my life. So I would disagree. It's funny enough, I've had someone on my podcast recently who also mentioned about doing something you're passionate about. And I look, I suppose it's everyone's perspective. For me, I had a lifestyle that I wanted to live. And when you spoke about, once you become a parent and you want to be able to do life on your terms, right? Like right now, we're here in the middle of the day because we choose to be.
Right.
You could be wherever you choose to be, and that's a great freedom to have, right? But as a parent, as a person, and as a parent, even more so, right? If there's a sports day and you want to go to sports day, or there's a theatre, you can just go and you can be. And I think many of us in Dubai have that are that fortunate to be able to do that. I would say, right? But this mentor taught me, he said, design your life, so reverse engineer. And I think the problem with schooling, one of the problems with schooling, is that they go from year to year, like you say, 10 years old, and then she'll go to secondary school, and then she'll get to 15 or 16, and they'll say, right, go to college, and now pick what career you want to be. Well, what do I like? What should I learn more? And you're starting from the beginning, looking out. And business teaches us what goal do we want to achieve, and how do we reverse engineer that goal. So I would say, well, how do you want to live? And whether that's, I want to be I'm not saying she's going to think it's at 10 years old per se,
Yeah,
right?
but
like,
potentially,
hey,
yep.
you know, I want to be a housewife and, you know, just be with my kids.
Yep.
Well, you're going to groom to a different way of life, aren't you?
course,
Right.
yeah.
And or I want to be an entrepreneur and I want to do something, you know, that's going to save the planet. Well,
Yeah.
now you're different, you know, or whatever it is, you know, I want to have the right to live freely. You might not want to get married and have kids,
Yeah.
right? I want to just be free, you know. So the point is, but you've got to find, I think more how you would like to live, and that's of course going to evolve from a 10-year-old onwards,
Yeah.
right? But I think, and then the thing that I'm doing with my son, who is going to be 9 in a couple of weeks, so he's 8 at the minute. I'm trying to teach him. I work on teaching him the ability to be focused and have discipline, so that whatever you want to do, you can get better at because you can self-educate.
Yep.
So whatever, and it might change. Like today, you might want to be a footballer. Maybe next year you want to be a boxer.
Yeah.
Maybe the year after you want to be a pianist. Whatever it is, if you understand this is how I'm going to get better, it's going to become from repetition and hours and focus and discipline. You can put your heart in whatever you want to put it into, but just know that's a skill.
Absolutely. It is. Yeah, you're right. And it's a great skill, I think. Discipline, for sure.
Yeah. And the power to self-educate, to understand it. You can find out and do research and, you know, practice something and get better at it. You can do what you can become whoever you want to become.
Yeah.
As long as, you know, you can see that. Of course, I think that as he spends time, so I'm divorced, right? So yeah, I only have like a few days a week. But spending time with me, and obviously because he's a boy, I think I guess you've got a girl and a boy. Do you feel that, like, you know, the girl resonates more with you as mummy, you know, and the boy resonates a bit more with his dad, does it not make a difference?
So I'm also separated. So, but my kids are with me full time.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, no, they don't see a lot of their dad. He lives in a different country. And so therefore it's hard to see whether or not he does resonate with his dad on a daily basis. But having said that, they speak a lot and there's a lot of common connection there. But he's, as a 7-year-old, I would say quite emotionally intelligent in a sense that he's very in touch with being able to express his feelings, or at least express that he has feelings if he can't identify exactly what they are, but he'll still let you know that there is some feeling and I'm just not sure what it is exactly, which I think is quite cool for a 7-year-old to be like, I don't know how I'm feeling, I just know I'm feeling.
Yeah.
Good,
That's amazing.
Great, let me know. Exactly. But also just in a very caring way as well. So, and I think that part of him, I'd like to think, is more me. So yeah, I think, and that's from my son's perspective. My daughter is quite literally a mini me, in personality, in appearance, in, for better or for worse, in probably almost every way. So yeah, we obviously resonate a lot, but we also butt heads a lot because we're just so similar.
So I see a lot of emotional intelligence with my son, and emotional awareness, and he lives more with his mum, right? And I'm wondering, you know, I would suggest that it's probably the fact that he's close, that he's more time with his mum.
Yeah.
I think, like, she loves animals, he loves animals. You know, he's got this, like, you know, if every season out, and I'm not sure if also it's just childhood as well, just innocence. You know. But obviously, when where he resonates with me is, like, you know, I think he, I don't want to assume, I think he wants to be an entrepreneur. Like, he sees, like, business, and he's always doing business and negotiating and stuff, and, you know, so he's like a chip off the old block. But that's another interesting thing, actually, where you separated, and did you spend the time being a single mum? Yeah. Are you conscious about bringing this sort of male energy to your son as well?
Definitely. Thankfully, I'm surrounded by incredible people, and and having been here for almost 21 years, we have a really incredible network of people. And I have many male friends and some relatives that really step up for both my kids, to be honest, and make that time, and, you know, will come to rugby games and you know,
He plays rugby?
He plays rugby, yeah. And pick up
that's
the
a
kids and
good
do things.
male testosterone sport.
Absolutely, yeah. And that, even that kind of community of people at rugby are very aware of the situation and really make the effort to, you know, have moments with him and have those chats. And so yeah, no, I feel like he's definitely still got that male energy around him. I also live in a wonderful community which is very very friendly. So all of our neighbours, we all know each other. We have a community pool and essentially the bar within our compound. So we're very, very social. And so even within my community, I have a few dads that frequently, you know, will take him to the pool and you know, throw him around the pool or whatever, and do those kind of boy things that I think are really helpful. So I think he does get it, thankfully. I definitely think having someone around more permanently is going to be beneficial for him. But who's to know? Yeah.
And just a little bit, it's kind of off topic a bit, but as an entrepreneurial woman and mum, do you have have you studied certain strategies, because you maintain a good feminine energy, and just so it's something that I know just because of the studying that I've done. So you probably don't know this, but I spent a number of years with Tony Robbins, like directly.
Oh,
I don't
wow.
know. So
I've been to one of his courses before.
right,
It's incredible.
I've been to 36.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it was a big investment of time and money and energy, but that's helped me understand things that I would say the average person doesn't understand, right? Because he's taught me formulas and stuff. And so as a woman, as a woman in business, you're in masculine. There's masculine energy. As a single mum, there's masculine energy. So, but you hold good feminine energy. So how do you? Have you studied that kind of thing to manage all of it? Because what I see when I see you is someone that's got it all together, and there's like you said, loads of moving places.
It's actually a huge compliment that you've just said about the feminine energy, because I would say up until late last year, I don't know that people would have described me that way.
Okay, cool.
And it is something that I have specifically been working on, because for many, many years, even during my marriage, I felt like I did have to have quite a strong masculine energy. Well, it wasn't even conscious, if I'm honest, actually. It was just something that was occurring.
Most people are not, by the way,
circumstances.
which is why I'm noticing it, and that's why I would think that you'd have to be conscious to manage it.
And then I did become conscious of it, and hence why I'm in a different situation now. And have worked at trying to shift that a little bit. Not easy, to be honest. Because I'm so used to just having to do everything myself, for myself and for my kids, and not asking for anyone's help. So I'm getting better at asking for help, and I'm getting better at leaning into the feminine a little bit more.
And again, so do you would you teach those sorts of things to your kids?
Yeah, I do try to, but it's interesting from having a girl and a boy, because I want my daughter to be, motivated, powerful, potentially entrepreneurial if she'd like to, self-sufficient, but I also want her to have feminine energy. So it's a really fine line when you're raising a girl. But on the other side, I want the same things for my son, and to still have the masculine energy, but to have that emotional awareness and that sensitivity and soft side as well. So
Do you believe in traditional gender roles, or do you think the woman should be more?
I believe both. I do believe in traditional gender roles. I actually believe that there's a reason for it, in a sense that things simply don't work as well when it's not. When there aren't clear roles. Now, whether or not that flips the other way, and that's accepted from both parties, fine. But it has to be very clear.
Yeah. So the reason I ask, because it's quite interesting. So I had a lady on the podcast a little while ago, and she was talking about being an independent woman. And so just something I did, it's completely off topic. Well, I say off topic, but I think it's when I was studying this, and someone was teaching me a whole lot of stuff, is that there's a whole generation of things. Okay, so what's happened is, let's say historically, a man has left a woman for a younger woman. Let's just say, right, that woman believes, or that one believes that. He's just got, that's a man thing, and he's just left me for somebody else, right? So therefore, you should never have that done to you. So I want to teach you to be independent. And so this independent thing comes, and the woman becomes more independent, she becomes more masculine. The man becomes less attractive. That relationship breaks, and so on and so forth. And it becomes this.
I have a theory on this too.
Protection kind of thing. But the bottom line is, I think that I think that for the relationship to work, there has to be the masculine and feminine.
Agreed.
And I think that I don't think the woman does or doesn't have to work. I think that the traditional roles hold good. I think we've got a lot of different messages coming into society. I think that probably since COVID, there's been more of an input from governments or press or whatever you want, the media, of pushing us in certain directions. What was the thing that came out? I'm seeing all this stuff come out recently about actually Bad Bunny, right? On this, on the. I don't even know what happened, because I don't watch the news, by the way, and nor am I interested, if I'm being honest with you, right? And someone's like, I can't believe people are paying more attention to Bad Bunny or whatever instead of this. And I think the whole thing is a distraction.
Yes.
The whole thing is just noise, and just to take people away from living a happy, focused, intentional life.
Absolutely.
But I think coming back to the actual connection, if there is the masculine and feminine, there's generally more harmony. I think even if the woman wants to be independent and wants to work, if she can't get into the feminine, and it should be a choice, but if she can't get into the feminine, that harmony isn't there.
Agree. Yeah.
You know, and that breaks down another element of you know of the relationship. You know.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in generationally. You know, the traditional roles were man, breadwinner, woman, home
nurturer,
caregiver.
It's in our DNA, by the way. There's a woman called Alison Armstrong, right, who's she's got great books. She's like a real big authority on relationship stuff, and she's like all different great books. I'd encourage you to read it.
I believe it. I believe that it is in our DNA. But what I will say is that over the years, even though it's still there, and that's why we keep coming back to it, a lot has changed. Women now have careers, and some of us put our careers first prior to marriage, prior to children. And so there are a lot of women who are completely self-sufficient and independent, and then they meet a man and he's also completely independent and self-sufficient, and they marry and they have children. And then it's expected from traditional gender roles for that person, the female, the feminine, to become the caregiver, the nurturer.
Yeah.
But also maintain that same identity that they had prior to being.
Well, I think it's difficult because I mean, again, that could be the case, but I think that the identity thing, maintain that is even if it's not expected, or if the woman decides to shift. I think when parenthood comes in, that shift in identity is very difficult for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Whatever that's,
absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think then it becomes really uneven, right? So if you are then still also working and you're the caregiver,
but that's not traditional. But that's not traditional roles.
Exactly.
Because,
so then it's no longer traditional.
Yeah.
But then there's still an expectation of the traditional role of being the caregiver, the nurturer, etc. And so the lion's share of that is on the feminine. And then, but so what happens is then the woman is like, well, if I'm doing all of that and I'm also still making a living and I'm doing all of these other things, then why am I married? And that's where I think a lot of marriages break down because they're not seeing the value of this other person that they're now also taking care of. Yeah. And that's from the conversations that I've had with a lot of people whose marriages have broken down, that seems to be where it kind of breaks.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I would agree with that. I think that that's definitely not how it should be. But I think that what was I going to say to you? If it was my way, or if I could advise, I think everybody should be an entrepreneur. Yeah. Right. At least, and I think then when you're an entrepreneur, you can actually make a lot more money without working nearly as hard. Yeah. Once you get to a certain place, right? You know. And I think it's a better way of life, and it gives you freedom, it gives you options. But again, if everyone was an entrepreneur, then we wouldn't have employees, we wouldn't have staff, right? And again, not everyone can tolerate the risk, the effort, the other stuff. That there's a certain character. So I think there's horses for that. There's horses for courses. I think that just everything is independent. So again, it comes down to our kids. I'm curious to know. Like I see my son, I see kids as a whole. So I'm quite a spiritual person. So I see kids. I see kids as being the closest to spirituality as we could possibly be. So I kind of think that my theory is that we're a spirit that's come in to have like this experience called life in a human body, and we come in pure with like unconditional love and laughter and playfulness, and we get beat down by life at different areas, and we develop barriers, and then that's welcome to adulthood, basically, right? So as much as it is our job as a parent to guide kids, I actually think that we can learn a lot and be reminded by a lot of fun and I mean, I would say I've never felt a love like it than what I have for my child, right? So that's true unconditional love for me. Now, some people are fortunate enough to have that in a relationship. You know, like that's not been me. But I think that even it's not even been that with me with my parents actually. Like I would say the love I have for my child is completely different. Of course,
you know, likewise.
Yeah. I'm just curious to know your thoughts and like, you know, like what you learn from your kids and you know, like how you, you know, how you nurture that, like how you guide that spirit in them. You know,
I like to think that the kids both have their own personalities in a sense and their own character. And what I learn is that playfulness and that innocent side of things. So to see things from a very different lens, because you say we grow up and we've got barriers and traumas and triggers and all these other things that turn us into adults that we hold on to through our adulthood. But when you look at it through the lens of a child, it looks completely different. My son said to me yesterday, in fact, he said, Mum, thanks for getting me a hat for school because we're not allowed to play outside as of today without our hats. And he said, but also, do do you remember I have this other hat in the cupboard? I said, yeah, can I bring that to school? I said, yeah, but why? You've got your school hat. Because some of my friends sometimes forget theirs, and I want to make sure that they can play too.
Yeah.
And it was just that little reminder of it's just a bigger picture. Like he'd already considered that there might be a kid, several potentially, that don't have hats, or that whose parents haven't managed to get there or haven't been able to afford it, or whatever it might be, whatever the consideration he had was, let me just bring a few extra ones in. It wasn't even just one. He actually this morning took about 4 new hats into school for apparently the kids that might forget it. And he said, and I said, is there someone in particular you're bringing it for? He said, no, just anyone that might forget.
In the future, you can tell him, listen, start a rental.
I know, literally, True.
Listen, instead of giving it to them and being so kind, rent them for like €1 a day.
I'll have a word with him. But that was just a really great moment for me. One, as a parent, that I'm raising such a thoughtful person. But it reminded me to be a little bit more thoughtful and to consider that other people might have those needs as well.
You know, as I do this podcast and I talk to parents about their kids, and I find there's a lot of similarities. I'm not sure if it's the age group. I'm not sure if it's that we're in Dubai and there's a certain energy around living here, where I think we're all very fortunate to live here and how we live. And I think that there's a happiness. And, you know, I was thinking this the other day, there's a general respect here. I mean, it's been a long time since I've lived in London, and so I can't really compare it properly. And I was in Spain, I lived in Spain and Portugal as well. But, you know, when I do think that there's some old school etiquette here. Like, for example, generally you'll see a man put a woman first, like to walk, you know, like to pass. Like that's just like a rule of thumb. It doesn't matter where you go. I see it happen a lot here. Like they'll let them go like the first through the door or whatever the case may be, you know. Whereas my memory of the UK, I don't know if it's accurate or not, is a little bit more pushy and just me first. And, you know, it doesn't matter. There wasn't, and again, this is very kid friendly. Like, you know, you walk across the road and a car can be like 10 meters away and they're still going to just stop to make sure you feel totally safe to pass. You know, it has got that feel here. I don't know if that lends itself to bring the kids as more caring and,
Look,
you know, relaxed.
I'm a huge advocate for raising kids in Dubai. I think there's so much to offer from a lifestyle perspective for children, but also the absolute multiculturalism, I think, is invaluable in development. So, you know, the kids have friends from all different nationalities, and so they're learning about culture and history and, you know, just overall day-to-day from so many different nationalities that I would never have even known myself living in Australia. Australia is an amazing country, always will be, we'll always call it home, but it doesn't have that huge melting pot of nationalities that we have here that really teaches you intricately what people are doing. You know, all my friends in Australia were Australian, and, you know, in Dubai the kids have 10 different nationality friends.
Yeah, and so we're going back to like how school helps them with English and maths, or helped you as well with English and maths. What do you think the things are that you've learned since becoming an entrepreneur, on your way to become an entrepreneur, that are really important in shaping you to become the character that you are?
Resilience is a huge one. Patience. I can't say I'm a super patient person, but I'm getting there. I think that perspective, because especially being on your own as a business owner, you only see things from your side of it, but sometimes you need to consider who you're dealing with and what their perspective might be on the matter and why they might have behaved that way or why they might be dealing that way, because often when you can see it from their perspective, you might then handle it differently. So it's given me a lot of perspective, to be honest, and whenever, and just in life, so whenever I talk to people and I think that my first reaction might be this, I take a second and think, but hang on, what would they maybe be thinking? And okay, if they're potentially thinking this or this, then that might be why. And so now I can probably handle it better because of that. So that's probably my biggest one. Definitely resilience. You know, in Dubai, it's amazing in terms of opportunity, but it's also challenging when it comes to bureaucracy and red tape and a lot of things that and I specifically refer to things like invoicing and receiving payments and things like that from a business perspective, because sometimes you can go months without receiving a payment, even though contractually it's signed that you'll receive it. So that's really hard.
One of my best friends who lives here has lived here for years, and very successful, super successful guy. We've been friends since we were 11 years old, which is a long time ago, right? And he would tell me it's great when you're here and everything's working great, but when something goes wrong, it's just a nightmare to get it fixed. Like who you go to and you can dance around and no one's got the answer, and
Exactly.
like
And
when
that
it
can be
falls
hard.
off that automation track of like working perfectly.
And you can have the best intentions to create the most streamlined, very specific, guidelines and instructions, but you can't guarantee it's going to go that way. And I think that probably has been the biggest challenge. And especially, again, being a single mum, I need to know when those invoices are going to get paid and when that money is in the bank so I can pay school fees, I can pay bills, I can pay rent, whatever it is. And not having that specific stability is a really big challenge.
Well, that's the entrepreneurial part of that.
Yeah.
I learned a lot of like emotional research. So when I was younger, I mean, I grew up in a completely different life, and so you spoke about resilience, and this is another thing as a parent as well. Like, what do we protect our kids from? What do we let them suffer so that they can develop their own muscle and resilience, right?
Yeah. True.
Like, because if we did everything for them, like again, I'll come back to the bullying thing. So my son's going through something at a minute where it's like he's got a friend that's been a good friend who's a lot bigger than him. So my son's normal size, but this kid's a very big kid. And a tough kid as well. So when they're all like best friends, it's great. Yeah. But this kid's a little bit of a rascal as well, right? Like it causes mischief, right? So, and my son's in I would laugh off like my son's in the it crowd because they're the probably the cooler boys or whatever, right? But they're having a little bit of an argument in a minute. And I think like my son's a little bit more scared of him,
right? Because he's a bit bigger.
Because he's a lot bigger, And it's like, do I protect him?
Yeah.
Or do I let him go through the things that, by the way, I went through,
right,
and shaped me,
I think part of it, and I think we're much better at this than potentially the generation before us, is just talking about it, just having those conversations. I talk to my kids a lot about a lot of things. Sometimes I'm sure that they're like, "What is she even on about?"
So I grew up a completely different way, and I wouldn't wish that on my son. But again, look, there was a great thing about it as well. But it was scary times, it was all sorts of times. But like I said, because I found personal development and I found mentors and I found certain things, I was able to elevate and I didn't have an inherent emotional. I didn't have an emotional intelligence inherently. Like, it was very low. So I've learned this stuff and I've realized where I've made mistakes in the past and where I could be better and all stuff. So I want to pass that on. So it kind of fast tracks his journey and he's more equipped. So look, just in closing, because we're sort of coming to the end now. What would be like the one big advice if you've got somebody around you that's either got kids a few years younger than you or about to become a parent? What would be like one of the biggest advices you would give, like holistically, by the way, not just parenting, because now you obviously you're an entrepreneurial parent. You've got there's a side of how you structured your life. So whether it's parenting or just as an overall,
I think my ethos on parenting in general is to be present. And that sometimes means putting your phone in a different room if you need to, and turning up to things that are important to them. We talked about sports days, things like that. The way their face lights up when they see mum turn up is incredible.
We are their world at the beginning, right?
We really are. And on that, you only have, as they say, whatever it is, 18 summers and 18 winters and 18 Christmases and whatever it is. And they're disappearing really fast. So for me, I will make that effort to spend that time with them because I know later I'll wish I did. So there's that side of it. And then the other big part for me is just talking to them. I just try and talk to them as much as possible so that they always know that they can talk to you. One of my biggest quotes for my kids is, always tell me the truth. And even if it's horrible, we'll figure it out. But if you lie, I'll be upset.
Yeah.
So at least, even if they're 21 and they call me and say, "Mum, please come pick me up, I've done something terrible," I'll come pick them up. But at least I know that they're telling me the truth.
Yeah, I love that. Really been a pleasure having you on, Katt. Lovely to spend some time with you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.